cash crisis. We're talking about Venezuela once again.
Systemic important banks. They removed the 1,000 they called monetary awareness.
All right, we are connected for the news update. And man, what an interesting day to say the least. So we are well beyond all-time highs in gold, and silver is right there on the cusp. And clearly, I'm seeing the narrative from the mainstream media talking about the debasement trade in reference to gold. How about more likely jumping into the golden raft to safety out of this debt debasement and the debt destruction that's taking place now? And I've seen some concerning narratives as well about the foreign exchange markets and its exposure to derivatives and all the other things. So I have lots of infographics as well as some headlines I want to go through just to share my 2 cents on these matters. But we know what time it is. This is what a reset looks like. And it's happening a lot faster than previous monetary restructurings. And I got a graph to also hint at that as well. So it's going to be a good one, man. But before I move forward, as always, for those who are plugged in, definitely let me know where you're watching from. Would love to acknowledge your presence in the comment section or in the chat, either one. And if you're new, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this information to give people a chance at hearing an alternative approach towards what I consider to be monetary literacy. Because monetary literacy is one of the most important things that we were not taught in school deliberately. And therefore, your boy got to bring it to you straight. So that's why I want to encourage you, if you're new to the channel or someone who hasn't been around in a while, take a minute, test your dollar IQ, go to rethinkingthedollar.com or rethinkingthedollar.com/quiz. 10 simple questions make a world of difference to help you understand the history of this instrument here and where it could be heading. And that's just the start of your journey. And then I want you to really bring it to home with the Dollarcation monetary cheat sheet, which can also be found at rethinkingthedollar.com, where you can download the entire infographic here. Gives you the entire history of our currency and where I believe it will end up, which of course is solely digital in nature. So this is the entire monetary journey that I've been on and just putting together in a simple format for you guys to educate yourself on in a much shorter time frame. So definitely check that out and you will be blessed, to say the least. But as always, let's get into it, man. So I'm gonna get into market activity, then go through some headlines and then share my 2 cents. And also, what a coincidence that gold is surging, silver is surging, markets are exposing the debt nature of our system. But then again, there's a deployment of National Guard's troops throughout the country at a time of a government shutdown. And it's like, things aren't really making sense. It's not adding up. But once again, as a contrarian, as someone who don't believe what I'm told, rather give my forethoughts as well as forecasts, I just think this is not coincidental, but we're going to talk about that. So let's get into it, man. Don't want to waste any time. So here we have on the screen here, this is early morning activity. And as of right now, we are past the opening of the Crimex, which is around that 10 o'clock-ish time frame. And gold and silver both are trending up. And so I'm sure if I refresh my screen, it probably has gone up a little bit more. And yes, it has. And so we're going to see an upward trend. Literally, this is what a flight to safety looks like, out of the old and into what is true, tried, and tested. And that's gold and silver. So should be surprising. But before I move forward, I want to touch on the quiz that I put out the other day on the community tab. And the question was simple. What do you think is really behind the global silver shortage? And so out of 115 votes, A, B, C, D, A, physical demand is surging faster than supply, which is what 47% of you believe. B, bullion banks are losing control of suppression, 19%. C, elites are hoarding metals before a reset, 24%. And D, it's all hype. The market's overreacting, 10%. So as you can see there's an assortment there. And I should have put all of the above or none of the above. But once again, you only allowed, I think, 4 slots. But just some thoughts here. Says Rob says all 4, and then Bab77 says why is silver going down? And then I down with us, and so that was in reference to after the Crimex slammed it down. But just a good way of interacting with the community. So definitely got some thoughts on this one as well. So I'm going to put that out. So definitely want to get your thoughts on that. But before I move forward, we're going to just give some recommendations and some suggestions to my people who might be new, because you never know. So for those who want what I believe is the most affordable and cheapest way of getting 24 karat gold in your hand. And so you can go to buygoldnotes.com, get yourself some of these beauties right here that will not be going to zero. And of course, I got a big boy here and all the small ones in between, but just a way of having diversified throughout the last several years. And so I've been trying to recommend things that I believe will protect and preserve for those who are on a low budget. These are all low budget methods to protecting what little you do have. Of course, if you big budget, then you can go buy bricks and buy tonnage. But the average Joe and Jane here, the average working folk, we just put, 5, 10, 20 to work. That's all you need to get you started, keep you going, keep you above the water liquidity as it rises in the days ahead. So just a good way of protecting yourself there as a suggestion for those who want to get involved. And then next, I want to encourage you. Another way to get involved is mini gold bars. So once again, another affordable way to get your weight up in a very costly manner for those that are on a budget. And so once again, not for everybody, but for some who realize the importance of getting gold, 24 karat gold in your hand, won't do you wrong. I promise you that. And then last, for those who want to participate and be a part of the community, this is where I'm most excited because you get a chance to work with people and be amongst people like yourself. And so as you can see on the screen here, we have a variety of people who are just dollar cost averaging ounce at a time. So literally, this is a way of automating your weight to where you can get 1, 2, 4, or 10 automated sent to you directly per month. And by doing so, you can accumulate and protect yourself. And then also by being a member, you get a link to your own store that you can share to help people get their weight up. So if you're interested in doing that, then I encourage you to join the Silver Team. Just go to mysilverteam.com, links in the description, and you can participate in this wealth transfer directly and be a distributor without having to have inventory. Just send people your link, let them get their weight up. You'll be blessing them and helping yourself as well. So just a good way to help my people out in the community. So, okay, with that being the case, let's get into some of the mainstream headlines out here that I found to be very interesting. So here it says gold climbs over 4,000, silver, Bitcoin surge as debasement trade, flight to havens continue. And so is it a flight or is it a slow cruise on a raft? Because gold and silver has always been there. It's been suppressed, meaning the tide has been against us. But now it appears that we got some good momentum pushing us. So we rowing a little faster. And all we're doing is just rowing on a impending flood of liquidity that's coming. So literally the debt debasement is more so like the debt flight to safety. That's all people are doing. So when the mainstream media comes out talking about debt debasement, debt trade, it's like, well, okay, look out. This administration is going to have to do something to distract the masses from historically true tried and tested metals and steer them towards the digital. So expect some type of crypto news update or something that's going to be very favorable. That's going to send the crypto markets juicing. And so literally that's people going to jump on that one as well. So it says gold climbed to a new record on Wednesday as silver and Bitcoin. So that's the thing that, Bitcoin had to be included in this. You cannot not include that because that is a part of where we're heading. But with gold and silver doing some interesting things, let's just look at Bitcoin real quick and see what it's doing this Wednesday morning. And so as of right now, it's at 122. And so literally within the last day, I wouldn't say 120 to 123, or especially in the last hour, is a surge. But we know they had to put that in there just because it's where everyone it's where they prefer everyone to go. And so once again, like, okay, in the last hour, last day, it's been trending down, but surge, okay, I guess when you zoom out 16 years, like the Maxis love to say, then of course it's up, 8 million gazillion percentage. Okay, sure. But not everybody got in early enough to really reap those gains. But it's not done yet. Okay, so that's just a little side note. But back to the story. It says here, gold futures blew past $40.60, $40, 4,060. Man, it says to touch a fresh record, while silver futures climbed to 48.70, their strongest level in decades. Decades. This right here is a heck of a story. And just think, this story would be undeniable from the mainstream media had there not been anything else to distract or to divert attention off of this historical transition that we're witnessing. And that's why I am more than a firm believer that the digital transition was strategically placed into this time, knowing that there was going to be something needed to help the government, help the powers that be that's orchestrating this entire experience as they lose control in a sense, but then again, have the solution waiting on us. And of course, it's digital. So yeah, it's just interesting. I just can't not talk about this stuff because it's entertaining to me in a sense because people won't be able to see through it because the idea of having hope along with the hype plays into the propaganda. But it says here, meanwhile, Bitcoin. Meanwhile, okay, so they had to. Meanwhile, Bitcoin sat at 123,000, hovering just below Monday's record 125. So here, and then you go right here. Next thing down, finance news. Bitcoin USD and JP Morgan analysts noted that the rise in precious metals and cryptocurrencies against the backdrop of the dollar, which has been downtrend since 25. The US dollar index is down roughly 9% year to date. And so, once again, like think about this: we are at a historical level. Mankind, as a species, and more importantly, over the last 100+ years, is where it matters most, has never seen something like this. And what I'm referring to, right here on the screen, mankind has never seen an ounce of gold denominated in the Federal Reserve note. And this is just going back to 1973 when it was $91 an ounce to 4,000. This is like some stuff where emergency crisis, something has broken, the system has failed, the people, and people dismiss what I consider to be three key truths. Gold is so important that in 1933, the government made it illegal to hold. Second point is, once they confiscated it from the people, they revalued it, automatically shaving off a good percentage of stolen purchasing power by redenominating the price. And then third, when they allowed the American public to get access to it in 1974, over 41 years later, it was then labeled as a commodity and tradable in the futures markets, where it no longer remained as money in people's psyche. So it took one generation for people to realize the importance of gold. And so if you want more of that history there, then that's where you go to the dollarcation monetary cheat sheet that I just referenced. And it gives you all the historical aspects. It gives you all the historical aspects of the dollar right on this sheet here. So things that I didn't learn in school, I had to go find this out for myself. And so it's for you to learn for yourself and pass it on to your kids so they got a chance to understand this stuff. Okay, but keeping it going. Okay, so that's just mainstream narrative. That's what they want us to focus on. Okay, we know it. Okay, physical possession is more important than digital distractions any day. But here we got Dalio echoes Griffin in seeing gold as safer than the U.S. dollar. And so we got billionaires out here talking about. So Ray Dalio has been very vocal. I've been mentioning that. He said that the gold is certainly more of a safe haven than the U.S. dollar, and the metals record-setting rally echoes 1970s. Then it says the remarks from Dalio, who founded the hedge fund Bridgewater Associates, came during an appearance on a conference on Tuesday when he was asked whether he agreed with the view of Citadel's Ken Griffin that gold's rise reflected anxiety about the U.S. currency. And so that's interesting that they're now shining more light on that. And just, as a side note, let's just look at the last month when they talk about the dollars down relative terms, especially when measured against gold. This is what they're referring to. So here you have over the last month, when you use gold as a barometer or a measuring stick against Federal Reserve notes, this is what the last month has looked like. Literally, holders of USD solely as a form of savings, in a sense, has lost 9.69% of relative purchasing power when it was time to go get an ounce of gold. So had you last month taken your Federal Reserve notes to go out and get some metals, you'd have had 9.69 more purchasing power out of those units that you would have redeemed. And if you go back over the last year, you would have had 34% more relative purchasing power to acquire more physical. So once again, it's only going to go lower because there's no floor to how low the Federal Reserve can fall in relative terms for purchasing power when it comes to physical gold. And of course, silver looks the exact same way. So, I've been showing this for a while, but, more and more people will get it as time moves forward. Okay, so where do we go from here? This is, to me, a good indicator of what's happening. As I mentioned, the flight to safety is more so people getting on a raft, whether it's a gold raft, silver raft, platinum, palladium, what I'm saying? I'm not, okay, you can participate in the digital raft, but then again, it's nothing tangible. It's on your screen, subject to all the counterparty risks in between now and, the hereafter, when I think the truth will be revealed. But in the meantime, something tangible, real, and fit that you can feel is a little different. And it feels different. It sounds different. It's just more of a connection with history. And why is that important? Because here we have what is a reflection of this flight to safety or debasement trade, whatever they want to call it. It's simple. Let me just remind you. John Exter, former Central Bank of Florida Federal Reserve member, gave a list of what he considered to be the riskiest to the safest. And of course, the safest always happen to sink to the bottom. They're still finding treasure ships now with some of that heavy stuff. And we got derivatives, private business and real estate. We got security. We got all these things here. And if I could zoom into the very tip of this, it'd be a sliver of silver, which is not on here. But as you can see here, the flight to safety always tend to go down or back to what was, which is gold and silver. And so just zooming in here, I thought I would try to put something on there, but as you can see here, that tip there is silver. And then all around this pyramid here is all the fiat currency that currently exists and how much it compares in physical stature against some of the biggest skyscrapers on the planet. And so once again, this is what's happening, and it's starting to become unavoidable to acknowledge these things. And then you have this chart here. So this is really something else. It says here, currency devaluation, Rome versus the United States. And so this is from a Bitcoiner. It says it took the U.S. 100 years to do what the Roman Empire did in 250 years. It's not looking good, folks. And so literally showing the diminishment of purchasing power over the 100-year period of its existence. So literally, if I was to overlay the purchasing power consumer purchasing power graph that I show, it shows just a continual downtrend of the Federal Reserve note in purchasing power terms. But when you compress that in comparison to the 250-year history of Roman devaluation of its coinage, the denarii, and so literally 100 years for us to get to damn near zero, and it took 250 years for it to take place within the Roman Empire. And so literally we setting records on a historical standpoint. That's what it kind of seems like. So just another way of looking at how fast this is picking up. And I thought that was a great analogy, because here is what is happening on a global basis that you may not hear about it from the way that I'm about to present this now. So as you can see on the screen here, we have IMF warns banks and supervisors of the liquidity risk in 9.6 trillion FX market. So let's find out what they're referring to, because they're talking about warns banks. And we know banks, everything has been done. Every central bank operates in for the best interest of the banking sector. So here we got here. Let me just run through this real quick. It says financial institutions. Make sure I can see myself. Financial institutions that dominate the 9.6 trillion currency market should hold the necessary liquidity and capital buffers and run enhanced stress tests, not just regular stress tests, but enhanced. I wonder what that means. To prevent disruptions to the financial system, according to International Monetary Fund on yesterday. It says, quote, although stress testing and systemic risk monitoring have advanced, the role of FX, foreign exchange markets, are as a conduit for risk transmission and cross-border spillovers remain underappreciated. So you got risk transmission, cross-border spillovers. What exactly is going on here? Let's get into some of the nitty-gritty. Derivatives add to vulnerability. Derivatives, and that graph I just showed you from John Exter, that is the heaviest portion of the system itself. And that graph that I showed you it says here is 1 quadrillion, but in actuality, since they've updated this, is like more like 5 quadrillion ish, of which that's a number that we can't fathom. Nobody knows where it's at. Nobody has enough to hold the other end of the trade, because it's literally just bets. fictitious numbers put on ledgers somewhere that are expected to pay out and perform as a system continues to roll more towards negative, which as of now is not negative because of the interest rates being a little bit higher than what these derivatives, I'm sure, are able to be beneficial at and for. So literally there's people taking losses. And so they're talking about the systemic risk and transmission of global spillover. And that's once the weight comes crumbling down, boom, 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 one after another. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Global banks have significant dollar exposure in their balance sheets, making them vulnerable to potential funding shocks. Not enough liquidity. The Fed needs to inject more to be able to pay back or to meet obligations or the interest of those previous obligations. Increasing involvement of non-bank financial institutions. So you got the shadow government. You got all those key players that's lurking in the shadows with whether it be the euro dollars on their balance sheets, not real dollars, but just ledger credits, debits denominated in what's considered USD, created by the shadowy institutions. Yeah, they're taking those shadowy euro dollars and actually trading them with real financial products in derivative formats and other things that we don't even know about, and they're having problems. So they need more of these things. And growing trade in derivatives says may also raise the global foreign exchange market's vulnerability to adverse shocks. So all it takes is one glitch in the system somewhere within the banking structure or some of these products to not perform the way that they were created to perform when they benefited the creators of them over the last several decades. Now we're witnessing a tightening and a cautionary warning being presented by the International Monetary Fund, the kingpin of all this debt, monetary debasement orchestrated against humanity. Says stress in the FX market can spill over to other asset classes, tightening financial conditions and posing risks to macro financial stability, especially in countries with significant currency mismatch and fiscal vulnerability. So literally, the warning, in my opinion, sounds like nation states that have been oversaturated with U.S. denominated debt, not meeting their obligations, which happens to be all the emerging markets, African nations, second, third world countries that were forced by the IMF to take on more debt in order just to debase their own currencies and for the IMF to steal real assets out of the country there, are coming due. So when you have all these debts, it's either you forgive the debts, which would, somebody's debt is another person's asset, and that other person going to take a hit, where no matter what, it's going to be a daisy chain of events that unfold. So it's stuff like this that lets me know that there's a need for a much greater distraction because gold and silver is getting too much attention. Bitcoin is not getting enough thunder to distract the masses from gold and silver on an international stage. Because mind you, gold and silver is being driven Eastern pressures and forces, Asian market, all the other activity, and the Western retail investors still don't really know about it because once again, our media makes sure they thrust Bitcoin down our throats as the preferred medium. And so literally we're on borrowed time, literally and figuratively, in reference to the derivatives exposure and all the things that are going wrong behind the scenes. And so here's another little topic of this article. It says strengthening swap lines. Literally, so majority of these other countries and central banks are not sure that the Federal Reserve will be there in time to rescue them by issuing swap lines, by issuing lifelines of fiat support against their own debt. And so it said the Federal Reserve has lending facilities with other central banks to alleviate shortages of dollars and to keep financial stress from spilling over to the United States. So literally, that's what we're being told. But we all know when stuff hits the fan, I don't think Donald Trump, when he actually takes over the Fed or literally merges it completely, I'm not quite sure he's going to be willing to divvy out as much liquidity as we have in times past, because I believe that, like, literally right now, everything we're witnessing are the tremors of the bigger picture of this great restructuring. And the restructuring has everything to do with the idea of every nation staying in line, getting ready to go through some pain. All the central banks in Europe, as well as the rest of the world, have already secured as much gold as they physically can to ensure themselves. But then again, they're going to be willing to and needing to reinstate confidence within their population, and they're going to do it through the announcement of the digital CBDCs or stable coins that will be fiat versions, but just solely controlled by the central institutions that issue them. And then they're going to try to reinstate confidence by saying, we got this much gold, we got this much gold, so we can, get back into the playing field because we can back up our gold, back up our liabilities with gold, not just right now. And then, of course, they're going to be thrust to adding Bitcoin to their balance sheet as well. So let me share this with you. Let me see here. There was an article that I was looking at earlier. Give me a second here of how Deutsche Bank is talking about the need to, let me see here, Central, let me see, I should have been ready for this one, but this is last minute. What wasn't really going to mention this one. Let me see here, so if I can find it. Okay, so I can just find a tweet here, but this is literally, Deutsche Bank just came out with a report, and here we have on the screen. Let me bring it up here. It says here, European central banks presidential Christine Lagarde criticized Bitcoin yesterday during her little speech, saying it had no intrinsic value. But Deutsche Bank just released a working paper saying that gold reigns, Bitcoin rises. The future of central bank reserves by 2030. And so literally, I went through the whole little spiel there, and they're talking about between now and 2030, central banks will be forced to buy Bitcoin, as if like it's going to really reinstate confidence in a world where, all it takes literally is just, something to happen wrong in the digital space, and that to really be proven not to be the most reliable source of real wealth. But then again, as I mentioned, Bitcoin has been put in this time frame for a window of opportunity for a wealth transfer, for a hyperinflationary money siphon, to where literally they're going to flood the world with currency. It's going to be forced into Bitcoin. Therefore, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million, 8 million, per, Bitcoin, while gold, goes to numbers that, people are going to try to minimize. Oh, gold is only 25, 250,000 right now, gold. But Bitcoin is, 3.5 million. What would you rather have? But it's all priced in something that is being displaced as a head anchor of our monetary structure. As all this blows through, I believe nations won't be forced to solely see USD associated with everything they do in international trade. There's going to be options. And that's why I think the East and the West may be competing for what they might end up being, but the West would prefer it to be in Satoshis, and the East would rather be in weight. But once again, we're just people caught in the middle of this. So, choose your side accordingly, or, do what you got to do. Anyway. Okay. So just a little side note. A couple other things here that I want to make sure I bring to the forefront. And so I mention all this with the idea that we're at very concerning levels in the monetary structure. Government shutdown, it might go on for a while, but what people are not connecting the dots towards, and this might be a little bit tinfoilish, so bear with me. I got the tinfoil, you know what I'm saying? So this is probably too far out there, but once again, the world of disruption and distractions and everything else, as you can see here, you can go out a little bit down the cuckoo train and try to put pieces together, because it may not necessarily be that far-fetched. But here, let me share something with you. Here, this is something that caught my attention. I'm like, oh, just putting together dots. Trump threat to invoke Insurrection Act escalate showdown with Democratic cities. So we got the left-right paradigm. Oh, the left are so far-fetched. They're so anti-this, anti-that. They hate our country. Okay, whatever. Republicans, we love our country. Get your American flag, put your patriot hat on. And okay, left-right paradigm. What a great distraction to really confuse people. Because in actuality, there's 350 million people who really care about their country. So it should be obvious. But the fact that we've elected individuals that disagree with us is a sign that I believe they all need to go. We need to reboot the system, start over, because our government itself is the problem. But that won't happen right now in this life. So I understand that. But in the meantime, you got to take everything with a grain of salt. Okay. So here we got a government shutdown, but a president dispersing National Guard throughout this country, bit by bit, state by state, in anticipation of establishing law and order again and democratically overran down cities, sure. But then again, it was done by the Democratic side. So they literally injected our country with foreigners to disrupt things. And people don't find majority of people didn't have a problem with that a year or two ago. They did, but they didn't really press the issue. So now you send the good guy in and clean it up and impose the Insurrection Act, possibly, which puts boots on the ground in the United States of America. And all that does is position an immediate response if something goes wrong. If something breaks, monetary system breaks, banks close down, the banks shut down, they'll have troops, American troops in position to help in the cities that they deem the most dangerous threat right away. And that's just me suspecting possible plays. But then again, there's other troops and other forces within our country as well that might also be deployed, i.e., men in blue hats with the letters UN on them. They're here. There's a UN base in, I think, Utah that is literally UN ground. You can't walk on and walk off because it's not property of the United States anymore. And it's good to say they flooded in all types of UN individuals from beneath the border, and paid employees disguised as refugees and immigrants from other countries. You had an influx of Asian coming in, young militarized men, all kinds. I'm not sure that ICE is deporting them directly because they may be, have the papers of employment saying that, at this date, next year, 2026, we're supposed to be deployed to this city yeah. So far-fetched, never know. Anything is possible in a world of complete destruction. But here you just got some little, Democrat leaders oppose Trump's military employment to cities. Legal battles ensue over National Guard deployment in Chicago and Portland. National Guard deployment raises concerns over militarization of cities, yada, yada, yada. So once again, it's positioned as a way to reinstate peace and stability into our country, but it's already positioned for if stuff hits the fan, we got manpower. And then here's another little video. Where's that? Nope. Give me a second. Okay, here's a video that I wanted to highlight. This shows some of the pleasure that people have. It says, this is from a guy, Jason Bassler. I don't know who he is, probably just an activist of some kind. But he says, the more I see about the National Guard in Portland, the clearer it is. It isn't about deterring crime or keeping anyone safe. It's about intimidation. The message: sit down, shut up, obey. You're not citizens' rights. You're not citizens' rights. You're our tax cattle. Then it shows a video of what looks like military forces, armed forces, cops walking through streets. I don't know if this is old or new, but just thought this was interesting because good to say that if it's not happening in this context yet, it's probably coming. So just a little something that people might be interested in hearing about. And then next and last, look at this. We just bailed out Argentina, and then you have the president, Javier Milei, putting on a performance. He's in a concert. He's got the president of Argentina out here performing. He always looked a little suspect with the whole little, he's a patriot. He's like, mimicking the patriarchs of old, Simon Bolivar, who liberated, all that region from such and such and such and such. But here you got this guy out here performing a concert, and his country's failing, his currency's failing, people starving. And this is, I guess, acceptable by the people. So could you imagine Donald Trump having a concert right now, calling it, America's back, our economy's better than ever tour, and he gets out there and I wonder if the MAGA crowd would show up in extreme support like they did a year ago. I don't know. They probably would. Okay. But to keep it going, here's just a little article here that highlights some of that. Milei performs rock concert in front of 15,000 people to save the election campaign. So literally, he's causing austerity within his country, cutting all types of government benefits, which is a good thing, but leaving more than 80% of the population distressed, down, out, broke with a failing currency. And he's wanting them to vote for more of that. Okay, sure. And then on the last note, I got a couple other things, but I can keep it going. But I just thought this was interesting. Once again, this is someone else's opinion, not my own, just sharing with you things that I think we should be able to share in a land where we have free speech. But this is an interesting narrative that someone who has a much larger following than me, put out there about Donald Trump and his recent saving of TikTok, as he's out here touting. So this is from Megatron. Oops, let me go back. It says here, Megatron has over 546,000 followers, so therefore people value his opinion. And it says here, Donald Trump is back on TikTok claiming he saved it after he basically handed over to a billionaire, Larry Ellison. To all those young people of TikTok, I saved TikTok, so you owe me big. And this is him in his video. RT reposted this. It says Netanyahu also confirmed Israel has TikTok under control in the U.S. now. So this is our commander-in-chief. This is numero uno. This is the guy that's making America great again, depending on how you measure great, especially again. But anyway, what is looking great again is the fact that those who realize where things are heading and have positioned themselves on a monetary basis ahead of time stand to be protected first and foremost. But then we get into the spiritual side of things and everything else in between. And, you know, we're still on course for the Great Reset. I know Klaus Schwab is retired now, but he's very proud at what he's accomplished in fulfilling his mission of taking the private and public space and then keeping the world trapped in between. Public and private. We got the public side, which is where the UN is working towards Agenda 2030, still in operation. You got the private side, all the technologies, the stable coins, the surveillance state, the palantirs, the this and that, all computer code-based stuff are still clamping down on humanity bit by bit. And so once again, not quite sure how we're making progress when we're going in the same direction we were going in all along. Anyway, that's just my opinion. But other than that, be blessed, be safe. Shalom.